Hi everyone, this is Nick Wagner with Team RCIA, and I want to show you something here. Usually I'm doing this live on Facebook with my partner and wife Diana McAlintal, and that is her desk, and you can see that she's not there. The reason that she's not there is she is in Atlantic City right now doing an event with the Diocese of Camden, New Jersey. She is talking about RCIA, of course, because she always talks about RCIA. And she did a Facebook Live yesterday from Camden and put out to the world there that I'm too chicken or something to do a Facebook Live by myself. So I thought I'd get on today just to prove to her what a man I am. But more importantly, to also share with you some information that I think is really important. I shared this at the Los Angeles Religious Education Congress, last week. And what I did there was I did a presentation that I titled Countering the Fake News About RCIA. And I've created some low-tech PowerPoint slides here that I'm going to share with you. Let's see. Oh, it says we cannot rotate while recording, but it looks rotated. Does that look sideways to you, or does it look clear? It looks clear on mine. Anyway, that page says Countering the Fake News About RCIA. And let me just flip this here. So the point that I wanted to make to the folks at the Congress was that there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of doom and gloom about what's going on with Catholics in the United States and how RCIA may or may not be contributing to that. So the first thing to point out is that the Catholic Church in the United States is about 1/5 of the population, 22%, or about 70 million. Oh, so yeah, so Marty is saying that the graphic isn't showing right. So Marty, how's that? Is that showing all right? So anyway, Catholics are about 22% or 70 million. And if you add in what folks sometimes call themselves former Catholics, that's another 13% or 40 million. Now, I put former Catholics on there because we know that a lot of folks who call themselves former Catholics don't really, well, you know, it depends. It depends on the person, right? But lots and lots of times when folks go through a stressful period in their life or some big event happens, they I don't want to say return. I guess return might be the right word, but they re-affiliate or they revert back to their Catholic roots. And so I don't think all of those 13%, which is about 40 million, are necessarily going to become active Catholics, but it's not zero either. So if you combine that with the 22% of active Catholics in the U.S. And the 13% of inactive Catholics, that's quite a big number. So I don't think we can say that the church is dying. I mean, what other organization you belong to that has over 22 million people involved in it? Now, all of these numbers that I'm going to show you throughout this come from an organization called CARA, Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate. They're a statistics and sociology group that is based in Georgetown in D.C. So another statistic that they shared is that there's been an increase in the number of Catholics who are affiliated with a parish. You know, when CARA or the Pew folks do or Gallup do these surveys, they just ask folks if they are Catholic or not. But CARA goes a little deeper and asks if they're actually associated with a parish, affiliated with a parish. And that number's gone up by 11% over the last half decade or so. And those who self-identify as Catholics has gone up by about 7% over that same period. So again, that's not an indication of a church that's dying or fading away. Another indication that we're getting stronger, we hear a lot about the vocations crisis. CARA tells us that there's been a 12% increase in the number of priests recently So 12% increase in the number of ordinations. Now, the reason we call that a crisis, or the reason that's a problem, is that 12% isn't high enough to be a replacement rate. It's not going to replace all the priests who are retiring and slated to retire as the baby boomers get older and older in the ordained clergy. But the good news is, look at that increase for permanent deacons. The increase in permanent deacons from 2000 to 2013 is 41%. 41% increase in ordinations. And if you look at the lay professional ministers, in that same time period, there's been a 24% increase. So that averages out to approximately, on average, 1 deacon per parish in the United States and 1.2 lay ministers in the United States. And, if you're in a parish that has that 0.2 lay minister, that might be, a weird sort of looking person. But the point is, we don't have a shortage of ministry, professional ministry in the church. We do have a shortage of ordained priests, or we will, not a shortage, but a lack of replacement of the upcoming retirement boom of priests who are going to retire. That's something to worry about. But overall, there's an increase in ministry, professional ministry in our parishes. So you put all that together, and what we have is over 866,000 new Catholics last year. That's combining infant baptisms, adult RCIA, which includes older children, and reception into full communion. Now, that's good news because, again, that's 866,763 new members. What other organization do you belong to that gets that kind of new membership, that kind of increase in membership? But it's worrisome because especially that infant baptism number, that's gone down since the beginning of the millennium. So around 2000, that number was closer to 1 million, 998,000 or something like that. And sociologists are trying to figure out why that number's gone down. But there's a couple of reasons. First of all, people are having fewer babies. That's one thing. And secondly, those folks who are having babies, many times they're having them without getting married. And there's still a stigma among folks. Some folks think that they cannot get their babies baptized in the Catholic Church if they're not married. Now, that's not true, but we sometimes even hear priests say that who aren't really correctly delivering the teaching of the Church. So those two things combined may be working against us when it comes to infant baptisms. But still, over 866,000 new members is not a dying church. One reason folks think the church might be dying is it depends on where you live. So if you look at these areas of the United States, these areas are declining in membership. But it's not because fewer folks are Catholic necessarily. It's because people are moving. They're moving to the south. There's a huge increase in Catholics in Georgia for some reason. And then they're moving into Texas and other areas of the Southwest. They're moving west into California and the upper western states. So that the population in those areas, in the west, southwest, and some areas of the south, dioceses are actually building churches. In the northeast and the Midwest and upper Midwest, dioceses are combining parishes and closing churches. And so if you live in the upper right part of the United States, it can seem like the church is dying. If you're living in the west and southwest, the church is exploding. Okay, so another myth that we want to counter is that the church is what I want to say, that the church is sort of unified or homogeneous ethnically, and it's not. There's large swaths of folks that are coming from other countries, other ethnic groups that are joining us. So we're basically an immigrant church. So if you look at these numbers, 57% of the church, the Catholic Church in the U.S. is third generation. That means that you were born in the United States and your parents were born in the United States. You're third generation. 15% of the church is second generation. It means one of your parents was born outside the United States. You were born inside the United States. And then the really amazing number there is 27%, up close to a third of Catholics were born outside the United States, or 27% are immigrants. So we really are an immigrant church. And that matters when it comes to RCIA, because a lot of our RCIA teams are kind of headed by this third generation group, and a lot of our seekers are in the first generation group. So there's a kind of a cultural transition or cultural bridge that needs to be made between our leadership and those who are going through the process. Here are some numbers about where that immigration is coming from. It's primarily Hispanic. I think most of us know that. So in 1987, 85% of the church was white and 10% Hispanic. In 2014, 58% of the church was white and 34% Hispanic. So that's a pretty huge increase, and you've been feeling that probably. You've noticed that in your parishes. Although I still encounter some parishes where folks say, you know, we don't really have any Hispanic folks in our neighborhood, or we don't offer Spanish Mass because, you know, no one would come. And I would just challenge that a little bit. With that kind of growth rate, up to 34% and increasing, it's really, really difficult to find any area in the country where there truly are not very many Hispanics who could not be served by Spanish-speaking ministries. And then the biggest thing that I want to point out here is I've heard people say that the retention rates for RCIA Catholics is very low. Once I heard a bishop say this once, that something like 70% of folks who go through RCIA drop off in the first year and don't return. And that's just not true. Again, these numbers come from CARA, the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate, and their estimate is that RCIA Catholics have an 84% retention rate. Now compare that with Cradle Catholics with a 64% retention rate. 84% is astounding. Again, nothing else, no other pastoral ministry in our parishes sort of has that kind of impact and that kind of effect. And if you're leading an RCI team or a member of our RCI team, you know this. Anytime that I'm with a group of RCI leaders, I ask them, how effective is your process? And almost all of them say, you know, most of our folks get deeply involved in the parish, or if they're not involved in our parish, they move on and they're involved in some other parish. But there's very few folks that are reporting high dropout rates. So you'll see that on the internet. You'll see bloggers say, you know, there's a 50, 60, 70, even 90% dropout rate. And I would ask you just to ask those folks, when you see that, ask them where they're getting their information, where they're getting their numbers from. I've done that, and they don't have a clear answer about where that comes from. So the reason I thought it was important to go through all these numbers, sometimes statistics can get a little boring. I try to make a little more fun with my hand-drawn scribbles there. But the reason it's important is because we can get a sense of doom and gloom that the church is dying, that folks don't come back, that none of this is working. And I want to instead give a little bit of encouragement to say what we're doing, particularly in the RCI, is effective in ministry. And that doesn't mean there are no problems. You know, we could do better. There are people, especially look at those Cradle Catholics that are dropping out. There are people who are falling through the cracks, who are not being served well, and are finding reasons to leave. But I heard Archbishop Wilton Gregory say, in regards, he was talking about the scandal. Somebody had asked him a question in a public meeting about what he thought about Catholics who were leaving because of all the scandals and sexual abuse stuff and things like that. And he said, it is true that that's had an effect. And he took responsibility. He said the bishops haven't done a good job of handling that. But he also said that he truly believed that Catholics who kind of had one foot in and one foot out, he said they were looking for reasons to stay more than they were looking for reasons to leave. And I think that's true. And I think if we can be agents of change and agents of hope and agents of good news, to help folks find a reason to stay. That's going to have a huge impact. So you just look around. I'm a big fan of influencing where you can have influence, and don't try to beat your head against a wall to influence things you can't influence. But if you look around, there's 2, 3, 4, 5 folks in your life that you can influence. If you can influence them to have a more positive outlook about the work the church is doing, and help them to be more agents of change, agents of outreach and hope to those who may be lacking a little bit of hope in the church today. If you can influence 3 to 5 folks, and they can influence 1 to 2 to 3, 4, 5 folks on their own, and so on, if we can spread that message of hope and extend that out like a giant spider web, then I think there's lots and lots of good news ahead for the church. So that's a little bit about what I wanted to share with you. If you are interested in more about this, I would encourage you to Google CARA, C-A-R-A, Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate, and they've just got tons of numbers and statistics. You can dig down as deep as you want and find out more about all this. And if you want to know more about how to be an agent of hope, an agent of change, we've got lots of information on our website about how to do this wonderful catechumenate ministry. So go to teamrci.com and you'll find lots of free articles there, lots of good information about how to do this work. Thanks, everyone, for all the great work you're doing. And send Diana a note and tell her that I did a Facebook Live without her. Okay, everyone, take care. Bye-bye. God bless.